according to John, the 6th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up to the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." When Jesus realized they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land to which they were going. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Shoemaker, and I am a second-year seminary student at the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. It's also known as LSTC, where I am studying to become an ordained pastor in the ELCA. And this, like Pastor Dave said, is actually the congregation I grew up in. I remember playing in this pulpit. I used to hide under the altar like it was a cave. And I'm so excited to be here with you today and to share this wonderful gospel reading. When I opened up the lectionary to see the text for this Sunday, I was surprised because in my Jesus Within Judaism class this past spring, we were told to share our favorite gospel stories growing up. And this is actually the story I shared. I can't help but love a story where Jesus supports eating as many carbs as possible. So diving into the text, the gospel reading starts with this huge, massive crowd following Jesus because they were witnessing these wonderful things he was doing, like healing the sick and, spoiler alert, walking on water. As Jesus and his disciples were sitting on a hill, they saw this large crowd walking near him. Though there is speculation to just how large the crowd is, because the gospel only takes into account the 5,000 men, not the women and children, and I'm sure there are plenty of dogs. One can guess, though, however, with all of that it was still a massive, large, huge crowd. Now Jesus, being the provider he is, and knowing the crowd is going to be hungry, he turns to Philip and says, "Where can we buy bread for all these people?" Philip answers, such as I would, "Huh? It would take almost a year's worth of wages just so people could have one bite." If Jesus asked me that today, I would probably also add in, HEB wouldn't even have enough bread for all these people. Andrew, another follower of Jesus, notices a young boy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes and willingly offers it. I can picture the young boy turning and responding with, "Who, me? But this is my lunch." Jesus then commands everyone to sit down in the grassy area. He then took the loaves, gave thanks just like we will later in the service at the altar, and then began to distribute it to everyone among the crowd. Then the people were filled. I'm going to say that again. They were filled. Those in attendance ate more than one bite. They had more than enough and were able to eat until they were full. Jesus then instructed everyone to gather up the leftover and broken pieces and were able to fill 12 baskets of what was left over from the original 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Not only was everyone in the crowd fed, but there were leftovers. The story of feeding of the 5,000 is not about a young boy who shared his food with a crowd, which then inspires everyone to be generous and the world is happy. It's about Jesus' ability to transform too little into more than enough. In this miracle story, God is at work in Christ, and when God is at work, there is always an abundance. I'm going to leave that here, however, and move on back to this large crowd. So there's this large crowd, and they just witnessed yet another miracle. And this story is told in one form or another in all 4 Gospels, which is a testimony of how life-changing it was for these people. What we don't know, however, is what happened to the 5,000 that day. Did they leave with a greater possibility and sense of hope than when they first sat down in the grass? Did they tell their neighbor and family about it? Did they get home and tweet, #fed once again, #Jesus always prevails? You have to realize people were following Jesus because they themselves wanted to be healed. They came out that day thinking, "This is it. This is the day that my illness will be healed and I can begin a life that's finally worth living." So was it a waste that they went out that day and waited in a long line for nothing? No, because there is power in healing in the witness, much like there is power in healing in the testimony. I want to focus on this, on what does it mean to be a witness to Jesus' miracles? What did those in attendance say to their friends and families when they got home? Was their witness enough to make them lifelong believers? Theologians don't have an answer to that question, and unfortunately, neither do I. But I can pose a new one. What does it mean to be a witness of Christ's miracles today in the world? Have you ever been a witness before? Maybe to a crime, to the impossible, to suffering, to kindness, joy, love, compassion, hate, disappointment, forgiveness. Working in the hospital as a chaplain this summer, I have been a witness to many things. I have experienced the beginning of new life, the last moments of life, the unexpected loss, the expected suffering, and much like the 5,000, after having witnessed the impossible, there's times where I don't know what to do after having witnessed such things. The seminary I am enrolled in, LSTC, calls its course of study Public Church, meaning I study competencies for leadership that focus on community engagement, public witness, and social transformation. Community organizing has helped give me a vessel to place my witness. I know these words sound a bit unfamiliar and even intimidating, as they did to me when I first got to Chicago, but they have given me autonomy back as a witness. As my classmate Kelsey states, LSTC has taught me to bear witness to the marginalized and seek justice for them, whether that justice be standing behind the pulpit, marching, or volunteering to help someone's story be told. I now know how to use my witness for good and change, and one of those ways is through the power of testimony. Testimony is proof or evidence that something exists or is true. Giving testimony is a way to share what we witness Christ doing in our lives, of God's wonderful works of redeeming grace, and how our identity is formed through Christ. At LSTC, the power of testimony has been used to begin dialogue with church leaders about gun violence. Instead of someone such as myself, who has never witnessed such a catastrophe before, taking the pulpit to harp on about something they haven't experienced, we brought Shirley from the south side on 55th and Garfield. He shared his personal struggles of systemic racism and violence, and how he remains faithful in Christ, though he's lost siblings and friends to both stray and targeted bullets. His testimony changed the hearts and minds of those who were present, due to the Spirit working within him and us. Testimonies encourage, shape, and heal not only the person who is getting to articulate their experience, but the person hearing as well. Nouwen states in his book, The Wounded Healer, that patients are guests who rediscover themselves by telling their stories to the ones who offer them a place to stay. In the telling of their stories, strangers befriend not only their host, but also their own past. What Nouwen is saying is when one shares their story of testimony, there is healing and rediscovery that happens for not only the giver of that testimony, but the active listener as well. So, where in your life have you been a witness to God's love and have not yet testified about it? Just think of all the missed opportunities to share with others the times in your life when God has provided. Where has God been working in your life recently? Where have you witnessed the miracle of Christ at work? What is the Spirit up to in the people around you? In the coming week, I challenge you to share your witness around coffee in the North X, or maybe in the checkout line at H-E-B. Don't be afraid to share the joyful or even messy, sticky details of your life with others. This might ultimately lead others to a relationship with God, one person at a time. The good news of Jesus Christ is so good, and I promise it's worth sharing.